Well, somebody said once upon a time that timing is everything. Timing is really cool today on the Bite Meat podcast. I'm John Lopez. Of course, the podcast brought to you every week by Texas Star Grill Shop. And we're glad to have so many pit masters, so many experts in the industry, that join us every week. And it's a lot of fun. A lot of people, it's very educational, but it's a lot of fun as well. And the timing today could not be better. Been wanting to get Robert Moss on, contributing barbecue editor for Southern Living, among a number of other things, and we'll get into some of that stuff about barbecue in this country. And obviously, Robert's been able to go all over the country and see some of these spots. I'm sure you have correspondents as well all over. But we were talking about the Southern Living. Is it top 50 in the country?
It's the South. Yeah. So from Texas all the way over and up to Virginia and Maryland.
So pretty much the only places that matter. So anyway.
That's right.
But so we're talking about Southern Living coming out with its top 50. I think it calls it the barbecue joints in the South. And lo and behold, today it dropped. So I kind of want to start right there because me being the barbecue nerd that I am, Robert, I immediately started sort of perusing it and going down the list. And my big takeaway, and we'll get into a bunch of stuff, some of the Texas places that are there, some of the ones that maybe were number one on the Texas Monthly Burnt Ends, a list that recently came out, and we had that editor on to talk about that list recently. Maybe not number one or the top rated Texas barbecue joint here, but let's start with what my big takeaway here was. It seemed to be there was a couple of upsets, so to speak, a couple of surprises. So let's start with how you came about with the list and what the whole process was.
Yeah, for sure. I've been doing this. I think at least since 2016, maybe sooner. We've been doing the top 50, and we do them about every other year, because usually there's not enough change from one year to the next, and even with putting them 2 years apart, often the list hasn't changed that much because in the South, there's so many great classic barbecue joints. This year, I think, is quite the exception. There is quite a lot of
movement.
Movement in the list. I went back and counted. There's 10 of the restaurants on the list. So 20% of the 50 are new and for the first time. Many of those have opened just recently, and just in the past year or two. And then quite a number of restaurants have fallen off. Some of them because they went out of business. So which has not typically been the case in the past. Usually it's more because there were new people coming in and shift them around. So there's definitely a lot of movement on the list. And there are a lot of people or a lot of restaurants that may have been on the list in prior years, but moved way up in the rankings because they've expanded, changed, doing new things that really, I think, made them better. And of course, some have faded as down the list as well. In part because there's just so much competition now, and it really is a different list. Yeah.
So the process, though, I know you're like me; you love barbecue.
I do,
but there's got to be some help you're getting somewhere, though.
Yeah, there is help. I definitely. I mean, the list is compiled by me, and the opinions are all my own. So if you disagree with them, that's fine. Yeah.
No, nobody will ever disagree with something.
No one ever disagrees with the barbecue list. But no, those are my judgments. But yes, it's definitely I tapped into a broad network. I've been doing this for over 10 years now, and I've maintained lists continually on my target list, places to visit, the things on my list. I've got a big old spreadsheet with all the restaurants in them, and I just keep it rolling. And as I travel around the South for Southern Living, writing about various things, eating as many places as I can. And each time when the top 50 list is getting to, I'll sort of look at the ones I haven't been to in a while. So I try to revisit every restaurant, make sure I've been back recently, at least everyone that's on the list. And then I always just have this candidate list of places I've heard about. A lot of that is, just friends, people I know, people I follow on social media who is sort of barbecue. There are a lot of people out there who love to travel around and eat barbecue places. And so I watch for those and put them on my list and try to visit them. Everything on the list I've been to, every restaurant list I've been to, most of them I've been to multiple times, especially the ones that have been on there for a while. A few of them who are brand new, I may have only gone once, but most everyone else has visited multiple times. So that's sort of the method, and then we can talk more about the criteria. But basically that spreadsheet, I sort it and recategorize and move restaurant up, move a restaurant down, move a restaurant here and there, just throughout the year until finally the deadline's coming. I have to sort of cut it at some point.
Yeah, what's a rough number that you start with? Number of places.
I would say probably, looking at my list, probably at least 100 that I would say are in contention. There's the 50, and then there, from the previous list that are there. Then there's always what I call the bubble, which is there's always this 10 or 20 that are really tough calls. Any of these, it's really hard to say that, oh, this one's 37 or this one is 52. So I'd say probably there's a pool of at least 100 restaurants that are in contention that are on my, between what's on the list, ones that were sort of on the bubble, and then my list of ones to visit. Add those all up. And then of course the ones to visit, once I visit them, they either get taken off the list or they stay in the contention. And I'm always adding new ones as I learn about them or see about them or read about them somewhere.
And for our listeners' sake, I do want to mention here that we're going to talk about the industry itself, because I think you have a lot of insight on some of the influences and the proliferation of that and some of the other things. We're going to get into some other topics here, but I do want to kind of hone in, since the list just did come out on this list a little bit longer. Number one, you mentioned criteria, and that was definitely something that I think a lot of our listeners are going to be interested in. You are born and raised, I believe, South Carolinian.
Yeah, actually, technically, I was born in Georgia, but I moved here when I was 1 year old. So I consider myself a native South Carolinian, and grew up in Greenville in the western part of the state, and then sort of gradually moved east. And now I'm down in Charleston, South Carolina. Spent a lot of time in North Carolina as well. So I am definitely have Carolina roots, but I do travel all over the South and try to eat as many different styles. And I've really come to appreciate all the styles. So there's no one particular style that I'd say.
Right. That's what I was getting at, because obviously we all have our, inherent born into biases. We're beef people. I'm in Texas. We're brisket and, ribs and all that stuff. Carolina, of course, a lot of pork, a lot of, sauced pork and all that. But you've been able to sort of objectively, sort of separate each category, and how does that fit into your criteria once you start making the list?
Yeah, I definitely do. And it's really tough. I mean, how do you compare a great whole hog restaurant, in the PD of South Carolina, where they're cooking out in, these big burn barrel cinder block pits, versus someplace somewhere in downtown Austin, where they've got the craft barbecue offset pits, and all that, or something like a Louis Muller or something like Snow's. They're so different, but one thing about traveling as much as I have, writing about barbecue and eating as much as I have, is I'm really a fan of all the different regional styles, and I like mapping those out and like really digging in. I love nothing better than finding, a place I've never been that has maybe a little different style barbecue. So I think I try to be, as objective as I can, and recognize that, great. There's no one thing that is the one true barbecue. That's actually something that's changed a lot, because when I was growing up, in Greenville, I grew up there, went to high school there, actually graduated from college in Greenville, South Carolina. And then I went to graduate school at the University of South Carolina in Columbia, which is all of 100 miles down the road. I grew up eating sort of Piedmont style, North Carolina style, vinegar-based sauce, chopped pork. It wasn't until I moved to 100 miles down the road that I even tasted mustard-based sauce, the yellow stuff, much less hash and rice. Back then, before, back in the late 20th century, barbecue was still very regionalized, and you sort of knew what you knew growing up. And so people who grew up eating mustard sauce and hash in the Midlands of South Carolina would say barbecue is pork. It's not beef. It's got to be pork. Whereas someone who grew up in Texas would be, no, it's brisket and it's ribs and it's sausage. That's what real barbecue is. I think, in the 21st century, that's changed a lot. And I try to, have that reflected in that there's so much variety, and there's no, to me, one purest form or classic form of barbecue. I think it's all worth exploring and worth celebrating, which I think the list, does have a pretty good cross section of geographically of all the different regional styles. And I really try to highlight in the write-ups to the list, what makes each one of the places special. What's different about it that you won't find just anywhere. And
Right.
any
And I want to circle back to that because the sort of the centralization of all styles of barbecue. But before I get away from the list once and for all here, I feel like I can't bury the lead. In terms of some people are, who won? What is it? Who are the top 10? City Limits Barbecue, West Columbia, South Carolina, was the top ranked. I hope I'm not giving away too much of your story here. We want people to go to the link, and I will have that link. But Snow's here in Lexington was number 2. So that's all I'll say in terms of the top list. But a couple of things stood out to me. Some of them are not a surprise at all. Lots of South Carolina, lots of Texas were on the list. And a lot of Lockhart.
Lockhart is still doing well. In fact, a new Lockhart restaurant made it onto the list. It just opened up in the past year, which is if you've been there, you know what I'm talking about. Otherwise, you'll have to read the list and see who made it.
Please do that. I'll put the link out there. But what stood out to you, like as you're making the list? I'm sure you're like, you're ranking them, everybody, and all of a sudden you say, okay, I'm going to press send. This is the top. This is the 50, and you look at it. Did you notice anything that maybe jumped out at you about the list?
Because I developed it, it sort of evolved and developed over time. So I sort of saw it developing. I think definitely a lot more new places on the list, places that just opened in the past, say 1 to 3 years, are on there. So that sort of jumped out at me. I think that, you really look at it, there's a mix of old traditional places. I have to go back and count. I think there are 3 restaurants that are 100 years old or older now on the list. And then quite a few that are 2 or younger. And so there's quite a span there. I really did strike me the variety and how different, just going, actually, yes, I'm going through them and I sort of organized them. So 50s first and 49. So I'm going through editing and going down to the list. And actually, as I was doing that, I ended up moving a few around just because, some of them that had sort of stuck in the 20s, like, actually, maybe they're going to fall down a little bit and they're going to bring some new people up. But I was really just taken as I was going down the list about how varied and how different each of the restaurants were, and how I might go from one that is brand new or just expanded to one that just celebrated its 100th anniversary to the next one is like, somebody who just graduated from a food truck into a brick and mortar.
Yeah, I noticed that was one that was very impressive. I read that part, and so people are going to read about that. Here's what jumped out at me: a lot of you typed the word craft a few times. Craft barbecue, and we've talked about it on this podcast. And to me, I've got every time I ask someone, whether it's a pit master or an industry leader or whatever, about what craft barbecue is, I kind of get variations of what exactly it is. How would you define it, and what made those stand out?
Yeah, it's sort of a catch-all term, or it means a little bit different to different people. Sort of like you could say, the word artisanal. That the people take that different ways. When I use it, I sort of think of it as a particular style and trend in barbecue that really started happening in the early 21st century. I think Aaron Franklin, probably more than anybody, sort of defined the craft style. And if you sort of lived through that era when Franklin and others were emerging, sort of driven by social media and blogs and all that kind of stuff, it was really a lot of people who may not necessarily have grown up in a barbecue restaurant family. They weren't inheriting their grandparents. They were sort of coming to it from different ways. Like Aaron Franklin was a musician in Austin before he sort of became passionate about barbecue. So you have a lot of people who sort of came to barbecue, fell in love with it, and decided to really master it. And then at the time, up until then, barbecue, I wrote a whole book on the history of barbecue, so I won't try to go too deep into it. But over the course of the 20th century, barbecue went further away from traditional wood cook barbecue. In the 70s and the 80s, everyone was switching to gas cookers, and barbecue was really sort of getting away from its roots and sort of becoming much more of sort of a, I would say industrialized is not the right word, but more commoditized type thing. The craft barbecue guys are sort of looking to the past, looking to tradition. They're very passionate about wood and very passionate about the old tradition. So they would go visit the old Texas meat markets, or the craft folks here in South Carolina would drive around all over the place and visit some of the old classics and sort of try to learn what they're doing, but then bring to it like this real craftsman approach to it, which is, okay, I'm going to, instead of just any old commodity brisket from the food supplier, I'm going to get prime brisket. I'm going to do get the best ingredients I can. I'm going to do, rather than just opening a can of green beans or corn as my side dish, I'm going to start with fresh vegetables and make the very best side dish I can. Aaron Franklin was sort of early in that vein, but lots of people came in the wake. So that's how I define craft. It's sort of a newer approach that has one foot in tradition, but also another foot sort of, a lot of these guys come out of fine dining. So it's the same thing was happening in the fine dining world of people looking to get back to traditional preparations, to local ingredients. So you merge that in with like the barbecue wood, barbecue smoke, and really a passion for traditional wood cooked barbecue, and you put those together, and you get what I would call craft barbecue.
Yeah, you and me, brother. That what I always call it in a very short way of saying it. Craft barbecue to me is technique and sides, and sides, and it's sides that are elevated. It's the technique, whether it's as you mentioned, smoke or Wagyu or whatever, the prime and all that stuff. That's good. And it's also a very good transition into our barbecue discussion that I want to have here. And I can tie this back to your list as well, which I highly recommend people go out and click on and read. I'm looking at some of the restaurants on the list, and I believe there's a North Carolina restaurant on your list whose specialty is, or one of the signature dishes, I should say, is brisket. Yep. There's a place in Texas whose specialty is whole hog, and I'm like, that's what I want to talk about. That's what I like. It is a shrinking world. I mean, it's not too long. I'm old enough to remember when I went to the Carolinas, because I was a sports writer and I traveled all over the country and the world, and I would always try barbecue in Missouri, in Kansas City, and that was different than anything I had. And then I'd go to the Carolinas, maybe a South Carolina game or something, and I would have the pork with the sauce. Then I go to Alabama. I'm like, what the hell is this? And so
ribs cooked hot and fast on a big old brick pit. Yep.
Yes, but now I can go half a mile away from my house to Truth Barbecue, which I believe is on your list.
Yeah, it is on
and go talk to Leonard Botello, and it's real near my house, and I can get all those things. So it's been a shrinking world, so to speak. I'm sure, obviously, the world shrinking itself in terms of just information and data and social media has something to do with it. But what all is going into play here, that now in any area of the country you can get some top-notch stuff?
Yeah, I think you definitely have those blurring of the regional boundaries. I was just talking about, growing up and never having hash and rice. And I grew up in South Carolina. It wasn't until I moved down there. Now you can get hash and rice at least 2, if not 3 of the top 50 barbecue joints in Texas. They're on my list. They're serving hash in Texas, which was unheard of. No one had ever even heard of the thing 20 years ago. You're getting this blurring of regional boundaries. And I think one of the reasons, and in my book, which is called Barbecue, The History of the American Institution, I sort of trace those regional variations back to around the early 20th century with the rise of restaurants. Restaurants really, early on, localized barbecue, and then one restaurateur was sort of develop a style, and they would train like whoever's working for them. The sort of apprenticeship system, and then they would go open their own restaurants. And so you sort of got these almost like these little pockets of very, very, very regionalized ways of cooking. That really started to fade away, almost disappeared by the 1980s, 1990s. And then in the barbecue revival we've witnessed recently, with we talked about craft, a lot of people coming to the business who weren't in it before. Well, they didn't necessarily learn how to cook from their dad who ran a restaurant, or from, they took a job at the local barbecue joint. A lot of them learned to cook by reading books, which there never were really barbecue books until the 1990s, early 2000s. And then social media came along, and so many people have learned about barbecue through the internet, through social media, through cooking forums originally, and then through, Instagram and all that type of stuff. And so you've had this, and you have at the same time a lot of Americans discovering barbecue who maybe didn't eat it growing up, maybe don't even live in the South, and so have are moved to the South and didn't have that as their tradition. And so you're really getting people who are not constrained by just wherever they are, they're learning about all different types of techniques. And then as people started looking back in the past, whole hog had all but disappeared. I did a whole hog barbecue map about 10 years ago. I think it had a dozen places on it. They were still serving a whole hog barbecue on a regular basis. That's doubled or tripled now, not counting the people who will cook them every now and again. And one of the reasons is, someone like Evan Leroy of Leroy and Lewis in Austin got very interested in barbecue traditions, but not just Texas ones. So he got very interested in the Carolina traditions.
Yeah.
And he's ended up putting whole hog. Leonard Botello is another example. You mentioned the truth. He does whole hog, I think just once a week, maybe on Saturdays, but he learned it from the Carolina guys. One big factor, which it can't be discounted, is the rise of food festivals, in particular barbecue festivals, where pit masters get invited to travel in from all over to a place. We have a big one here in Charleston called Holy Smokes. And I was involved in helping organize originally. Texas Monthly has a big one. The guys at Southern Soul do a great one called Firebox. There's at least 20 big barbecue festivals where barbecue restaurateurs will come from all over. And these guys stay up all night, in the pits and talking to each other. It's great camaraderie, and they learn from each other. So they'll actually, you may have somebody from Texas, like Leonard, maybe cooking next to Sam Jones from Skylight Inn and Sam Jones Barbecue in North Carolina, and they're trading secrets, and then they go back home and say, I want to try my hand at a whole hog, and often we'll get the cookers. So that actually has spread a lot. That's one of the reasons why I think you're seeing a lot of the blurring of the boundaries, is just how much interconnection and sort of trading of ideas and trading of secrets there is in the barbecue world. And the barbecue world, among the pitmasters at least, is a pretty small world, and they do
it's very close knit.
Know each other. Yep. And they share a lot of information, and they share recipes, and they're always texting each other. Huge text threads sharing information. So that's a big factor today.
I saw recently the sausage sensei down here in the Austin area, Bill Purvis, spent I think a month or 3 weeks in Australia. At a big festival doing some stuff down there. But that also is another tie-in to something else I really wanted to talk to you about, and that is the influences, not just like the proteins that people are cooking, but the influences of cultures. There some of the great barbecue restaurants now are Asian influenced, or Korean influenced, or Mexican, or South American, and it's the same or much the same proteins, but boy, it just changes the whole game. What has that proliferation been like?
Yeah, that's another thing that is really probably only been in the last 10 years, maybe
at the most,
even less. Yeah. I think what happened is you got the craft explosion around 2010, 2010 to 2015. And lots of people got into the business. You had all these food trucks popping up, but everybody at that point was sort of trying to master the classics, if you will. Your brisket, your pork shoulder, your ribs, your sausage. But then once people sort of did that, they started saying, okay, well, how can I distinguish myself from the crowd? I mean, everybody's cooking brisket. I just can't just cook brisket and ribs. And you got a lot of folks who are starting to look around and bring flavors in. A lot of people who maybe, from their family heritage, maybe from an Asian background, or maybe from a Mexican or some Latin American background, who started taking some of the flavors from their family's recipes and things like that, and starting to incorporate them into it. 2 of the top 50 restaurants on the list are run by owners slash cooks with Puerto Rican backgrounds. And they have taken, they're both in the Carolinas. They've taken some of the Carolina traditions, but then they bring to it sofrito and, all these wonderful flavors of Puerto Rico, and mojo sauce and all that, and brought that to the mix. So, it's a way, in some ways, it's a way of differentiating itself, but people differentiating themselves. In some ways, I think it's about people taking barbecue and making it more personal, more related to them. And it coincides with, I think, just dining in general, even outside the barbecue world, just people being much more interested in global flavors. And if you think about, I still remember when if you went to a Mexican restaurant in the Carolinas, or somebody wrote up a Mexican restaurant.
I know what's coming.
I'm not going to talk about the food you get, but like if somebody wrote about a newspaper, they would have to put in parentheses how's crazy words like taco.
Oh, had to pronouncing them.
Yeah, because no one had ever heard of such things in the Carolinas. So just our culinary just sort of boundaries have expanded a whole lot in the 21st century, and that's so not only the cooks want to cook that way, but the diners are very interested in eating that way. Like this, I mean, nothing's better than smoked meat on a taco. It's what better combination is
several
there,
places here that it's basically Mexican food, but it's also pork ribs and brisket, or chicken or whatever, and it's so good. And that's one of the things that I earlier I mentioned, the Kansas Cities and the Carolinas and Alabama. I didn't mention necessarily like some of the Tennessee places, et cetera. So we know the hot spots, for barbecue, especially in the South. Are you seeing any other this city or this region is really starting to catch on? Like it's just really starting to expand some?
Yeah, I think one noticeable thing with the list, there are 3 restaurants on it. I think it's 3 from the state of Virginia. And when would 5 years ago,
never.
Nobody talked about Virginia barbecue. And I actually did a earlier piece for Southern Living. I think it was a year or 2 ago, where I traveled up all through Virginia and eating up there. It's sort of a convergence of factors. You've got some new folks coming along, some craft types who are bringing that sensibility. You've got some older restaurants as well that have been around for a long time, but who have sort of doubled down. One of them on the list, which is Almonds in Fredericksburg, Virginia, used to cook on the big gas assist, pits, got rid of them, brought in all wood cooked, and sort of returned to their roots. So they're starting to look to Virginia traditions as well, and making like old traditional Virginia sauce recipes and things like that. So the state of Virginia is starting to really take off all throughout Virginia. Far west is Roanoke, and even over almost the Tennessee line, all the way over to Northern Virginia, where you start getting up in the DC area. One of the other restaurants on the list is in suburban DC. So Virginia is really taking off as sort of a barbecue state. Interestingly enough, the 18th century, George Washington went to barbecues. Virginia was the birthplace of American barbecue. It really,
hey, that's why you got to read your book. That's why you got to read your book.
And spread outward from there, and then somehow disappeared in the 20th century, or almost disappeared.
Give us the name of the book again, since we mentioned it.
It's Barbecue: The History of an American Institution, and it's the first full-length book on the whole history of barbecue in America. Starts in the colonial era and takes it straight up to, well, the latest edition goes up. It was published in 2020, so it takes it straight up to the the early 21st century.
George Washington was smoking that backstrap, baby.
He certainly was. He was attending a lot of them. He was hosting them, and he was using them to press the flesh and get elected. That's how you got elected.
Hey, food, baby. That gets it done all the time.
Political barbecues go a long way back.
Yes, they do. So, how healthy is the industry now? And I know that's a very broad question, so I'll try to sort of hone in on what I'm looking at here. So, COVID year 2020, the industry in terms of sales of pits and such, and people trying to learn, really, just went through the roof. Then there's been a big lull, I would say, for about 23 into late last year. But I'm wondering how that affected the restaurant industry. Could it have been a good thing because more people are interested in going and testing other things, or is it still something that's rebounding?
Yeah, well, if you want to talk about the restaurant industry specifically, not just the larger live fire barbecue, backyard industry, just on the restaurant front, I would say it's a mix. It's really a mixed picture. You're getting this divergence. For the first time on this year's list, I think I had to strike off almost a half dozen restaurants that had closed. Which we always had one or two you would close each time, but and others that maybe had been on previous lists also closed in the last year or two. You're seeing a lot of places just giving up or closing the doors. A lot of times it's because the owners are you're ready to retire. They don't have any family who want to take over the business, and so they either try to sell it or they get out. Sometimes you have folks just either getting in over their head, or it's just too hard to make a living, and then they get burned out on it, and they finally just sort of say, okay, we have to close down. It's a hard business, particularly if you are outside the main cities and hotspots. Now, on the flip side, we talked about all the new people entering. Barbecue is really thriving in cities in particular. And if you look at the list, you probably will notice, this concentration of more and more restaurants who are in larger cities where the mode is a little bit different. They're able to charge a lot more for the barbecue. If you're in a small town in the Carolinas, for instance, or in Texas, you're really competing not with the barbecue joints. It may only be one or two others. You're competing with the fast food restaurants, and you're competing with like the sort of the family diner, right? You're competing for the local residents' dining dollar. If you're someplace like Charleston, where I am, or Raleigh, North Carolina, which has really boomed in the last couple of years as a barbecue hotspot, those restaurants are really competing more with the fine dining type places. And it's a big night out. You can charge a lot more. Those restaurants have full bars. They have TVs. They have, it's not just a place to go get a sandwich for lunch. It's a place to go hang out and have drinks with your friends and all that kind of stuff.
That's very interesting.
Yeah. What you'll see on the list, I think I noted in the introduction, is that their expansion was definitely a theme on that list, both in individual restaurants, either like moving to a new location or building on in their existing locations. A lot of times they're adding more, pit rooms, they're more space in the pit. They're extending, they're adding bars, they're adding, they're getting bigger and they're adding more things. They're adding larger menus and all that gets better. Or you have established restaurants opening third, fourth, fifth locations, including concessions in like the big stadiums in it, like Atlanta.
Yeah, that's happening here.
Yeah. And so that's definitely going on. So you have these existing businesses expanding and taking off, but what they're becoming is they're not as much a lone horse single operation. They're becoming big restaurant businesses,
corporations.
Yeah, almost. And they're, once you get above 2-3 locations, maybe one person, one owner can sort of keep tabs and everything. Then they have to start building managers and corporate processes and all that kind of stuff. And so they're starting to go upscale. So you really see that divergence of, the sort of contemporary, larger format, hangout, fine dining sort of inflected or nice, fast, nice casual kind of places doing well, expanding, growing. The more modest, small town, rural barbecue places, especially ones maybe operated by a family that's been doing it for years, they're really, really struggling. We haven't talked much about the market, but even in everyone I talk to, who's regardless of what type of restaurant they're in, meat prices are killing them.
I was just going to mention that.
Yeah. The pit masters are texting each other about brisket prices every week and what supplier are you using? Where can I find more? What are your tricks? What are you charging for it? How are you doing surcharges? Are you raising your prices? It is a major problem still. It was really bad in particular with the labor market right after the pandemic. Labor market, I think, is lessened somewhat, but the food costs and the meat is still just through the roof, and there doesn't seem to be any sign of relief there. And that's becoming this major pressure on people's bottom lines. And it's why a lot of these places I talked about going out of business are ultimately hanging it up, because they're just not, they just can't justify staying in business with the
and keeping the quality.
And
so many of the good ones want to have that really good quality, and it's a must.
And just something like the inconsistency in brisket size has been driving a lot of pit masters crazy, because they'll get a shipment and 1 week it's all mixed different sizes, or it's 1 week it's really small, the next week they're really big, and it sort of messes up your timing and everything else. And how do you cook it, and how do you ensure consistency if the product that comes in is different every time you go to cook? And so that's been a big problem with the industry.
One more for you here, because I could go on forever. We'll get you on again down the road, because there's a lot of things that are bouncing through my head, but I don't want to keep you all day here. I want to ask you just about some of the musts. I guess this kind of comes back to your list as well, because you're trying all these barbecue restaurants. You've been doing this for a long time. Like some of the musts that even our backyard pit masters can sort of strive for. Like when you take a bite of it's not like a major competition like Memphis in May or something, where it just comes down to one bite. But truly, that first bite, the first couple of bites, what are you looking for? What should people strive for in terms of let's just go with the big four here. Well, big three, we'll put sausage aside, brisket, pork, and chicken.
Yeah, I think it's almost hard to describe, but definitely you want that big first bite. But for me, um, I think it's less important that you have, and I've judged barbecue competitions. So definitely the competition thing is about having that first bite because the judges may only have one or two bites, really
Yeah.
explode. For me, it's not having some big upfront bite. It's not loading things down with spices and 42 different types of ingredients and a lot of salt and everything. So it just bangs right your first mouth. You have to want to take the third, fourth, and fifth bite. And that's always the key to me. What really works for me is it you don't want your barbecue overly smoky. Some of my favorite barbecue is not smoked per se. It's cooked over direct heat where the coals are burned down outside. Think of like a charcoal grill, right? You don't
Mhm.
you don't have a lot of smoke in there. It's not about laying on smoke. It's not laying on a heavy layer of spice. It's about subtlety and then of course the cooking and tenderness. The consistency is key. Being able to consistently hold the meats at a constant temperature while cooking and before they're served is key as well. Holding how you hold the meat really matters because what you want is it when it's cut or when it's delivered. Really, not everyone is slicing the order. Some people are doing saucing pork, whatever. But you
Mhm.
want it to be consistently at its best as soon as the person picks up and takes a bite out of it. So I would say, takeaway for anybody who's trying to, improve up the game in the backyard is don't worry too much about layering on smoke. That's not important. If you're cooking on all wood and it's going to come through subtly
Mhm.
in the flavor. Don't go crazy. I'm not a big fan of barbecue rubs. I tend to use just salt and pepper, maybe just salt depending on what I'm cooking, because the real flavor needs to come from the balance of the meat and everything else. And just laying on a bunch of cumin or chili
Yeah.
powder and all that it's just going to distract from the flavor of the meat. And you know and then just really focus on consistency of
Mhm.
temperature and quality. And another key thing if you're cooking at home is how do you hold it. Barbecue holds really really
People
well.
don't do that. People
Yeah.
just set it down, and I'm like, "Oh, you gotta, and let it rest and
Let
let
it
it
rest,
absorb
and
and
it will hold for hours if you put
hours."
a pork butt or you put
Mhm.
a brisket, wrap it correctly, and put it in a cooler, not with ice, but just in a
Yeah.
cooler to keep it warm. That those things will hold great. And all the restaurants you're going to, these top 50 restaurants, they've all got nice warmers and they're pulling meat out of the warmer constantly, and
Mhm.
it holds great. They may have cooked that thing, you know, 10 hours before, but it
Or
will,
the
it will
day
hold
before
very well. Yeah.
sometimes.
Or the day before. Yeah. And,
Yeah.
some of the ones I was interesting, some of these, the really good spots that don't have giant kitchens, they are actually often cooking a day or more in advance
Yeah.
of holding that meat on just a cool, either a
Yeah.
warmer or on a a warm pit
Mhm.
for 24 hours, just because
Yeah.
they have to cook everything else and they have pit space to do it
Yeah.
all at one
Yeah,
time.
I see it all the time.
Yep.
Well,
Barbecue
Robert,
holds great.
this has been fantastic. I am going to bug you again down the road because it's been great. Where can people see it? I'm sure southernliving.com and
Southernliving.com, though, that site changes up a lot. If you can't find it there, robertfmoss.com is my website, and then my Instagram handle is same, Robert F. Moss. You go there, I've got links to the top 50 right there, or it's in my bio on my Instagram page, and yeah, you can find it.
all right.
No, I think if you just Google Southern Living Top 50 barbecue, it's going to
Oh
pop right
yeah,
up also.
that'll be great. And I think you know where to find me when you need that Texas correspondent to weigh in. I'm
Well,
just saying.
absolutely, I
I'm just
do.
saying.
Yeah, I'm always looking. The fun part about the list is, the dreadful part is writing it up. The fun part is now that's behind me, I got to start making the next list and making my candidates and go start eating
There we go.
for
There
the
we
next
go.
time around. So if you got recommendations in your area, please. I guess you're down. If you're near Truth, there's lots in the Houston area, though. You need a lot of gas to find
Oh
them
yeah,
all.
there
It's a big
absolutely
area,
are.
but I'm always looking for tips and ones to add to my target list.
All right, that is Robert. This is the Bite Meat Podcast, brought to you every week by Texas Star Grill Shop, and really appreciate you joining us. Really appreciate everybody joining us here on the podcast. You can get it wherever you get your podcast, no matter the platform. You guys have a great week, a great weekend. Smoke it up, and we will talk to you next time.